Well, greetings everybody. Hope all is well. I am Dr. Contrast and we are live. And boy, believe me, I am so glad we're back on the air and getting things moving here further we can kind of move into. But I just said 2 weeks ago, I had to stop everything because we had a difficult situation at our residence. We have that resolved, so I much appreciate your patience with me and understanding that we had a really difficult time getting things organized on that front, but everything's good now, so we should be in very good shape. But I just want to take a moment again to thank you for being so understanding and very kind in terms of waiting for me to put this piece together here. So I thought today it'd be a lot of fun to go back in and look at some things here that we've done this before, but not nearly to the same depth we're going to try and take it today. This is a good example, for example, hopefully will be a good example for those of you looking for a new creative tool to work with a little formula or a format known as empathic sketch rendering. Now, it's not sketch rendering as much as it's ideation. It's more of a really an emotional feeling in terms of putting together a process. And I've been using an aircraft example today, looking for either an interdiction fighter or a short-range bomber, some sort of an aircraft system that we can kind of utilize as a tool to see how this operation works from the point of view of, hey, hi Dakota, how are you? Good to have you on board. Are you doing well? Thank you so much for joining me, and I just want to make sure that this conversation today and this demonstration today will hopefully be of help to you in putting together what an empathic system looks like. And while I'm at it too, I want to be very careful here. I'm using an aircraft example here today, looking for an introduction or an escort fighter or some sort of medium-range bomber. However, for future reference, if you would like me to put something together maybe on a product design tool system for empathic sketching, I'd be more than happy to do that to help you too. But hopefully today will give you some insight as to what this empathic process looks like. And also, I'm really looking forward to the fact that we're going to go through some series here today. I'm going to show you some examples of work, what started it all, some sketches, and then back into empathy. And then moving into, for example, the definition in the series. And I'll show you a demonstration of how it works with contact crane. By the way, too, before I forget, we will be, thank you, I hope you're, yeah, it's been very good. Thanks very much, Dakota. We're past that crisis now, and it's really good to be back on the air, and thank you so much for joining forces. So if you have any questions I go through the process here today, feel free to stop me, and I'll do the best I can to describe what you're going through here. But the study on the screen you see now, I put these up just to give you a quick example of what it was using white contact crayon, white HB contact crayon on black Canson paper. These sketches are done for a group out in California looking for an advanced vehicle aircraft design. So I thought I'd start here and take it back a page and go through a set of sketches into empathy sketches and then into a final resolution and show how that works in my demonstration. Very interesting stuff, but I think the basic thing about empathy sketch rendering or sketching is very simple. It's a three-step process. Number one, it's a strike. Secondly, it's analyze that strike. And then third, interpret that strike. And you're not conscious of, let's say, aircraft or product or architecture or interior space or furniture or whatever it might be. You're just looking for an emotion, some sort of a characterization of what these processes are looking for. So these were done very quickly for that group out in California and Advanced Vehicle Tactical Aircraft Studies and high contrast black and white. So what I've gone through here is, for example, this is an emotional strike. Then you analyze what you're looking for example, dihedrals, tail systems, engine systems underneath, and canards and so forth, the wing surfaces. So all that's part of the process here. That was one. Let me move along here. There's one. Get these out of the way. There's a second one, looking at that kind of a different sort of approach here. We'll kind of, let's put this back a little bit. We're a very long, expansive wing system here. But I want you to notice here, in all these sketches that we're looking at so far, all the thick and thin lines are really kind of playing up, for example, a very, very gossamer to a very thin strike to a little wider, back to a thicker strike, down below. That's the secret of empathic sketching. Twisting that contact crayon to get that form down and analyze the shapes you're dealing with and really go thick and thin and much more gesture-y. So it's a very innovative process. Now, if I were to define empathic sketching, it would be as following. Empathic sketching it develops innovative user-centric design solutions in problem-solving scenarios. So it defines a certain emotion or an innovation that you're looking for, and it gives you a feel for a whole new look at and an approach to form development. And I will say this too about empathy: when you utilize it, begin to work with it, it is one of the most magnificent tools for newness and creativity you'll ever discover. Because it doesn't govern you with, oh yeah, it looks like this, or you're looking at a whole new different depth of emotion to get forms down. And as I said too, Dakota, since you're on board here, This is aircraft here today, just going to get it started. But for future reference, if you would like me to put together a program on product design and how to develop that, and then begin to look at that as an innovation problem-solving tool for user interfacing, happy to do that as well. So I've used this whole process my entire career, and I've used it for aircraft, product design, transportation design, interior space, logo development. It's that universal. It's just that neat. And by the way, I'll get into this a little bit later, but here, I just want to give you an introduction about these high contrast black and white empathy studies. Second one, third one, this is more of like a cruiser of some sort. We're very, very simple mechanical looking shapes here. I think that'd be a kind of neat thing to do, Dakota. So I'll be more than happy to go ahead and change gears here. Once we go through this process, I might start today looking for a search on the thing I'm looking for, this aircraft design, because I've got some work to do to send out to California using this system. And then maybe after that one, we'll do one for product design with your description, so it'll be helpful to you. That'd be great. Again, third, this is more of a cruiser look at maybe a short interdiction aircraft. Short bomber of some sort. So that's another one study we're looking at here. Then, as we go back through here, the last study we did, this is more of a twin wing system here. Let's go back to the front of this thing. Very, very different look. Engine intakes, lower wing surface, higher wing surface. This is more of like a butterfly or dragonfly system where we looked at, for example, and putting together these sketches together. So let me ask you a question here, Dakota, since you're on board here. Are you seeing the magic of working with thick and thin lines and how it becomes very gossamer and very sharp and how very crisp it is? That's the secret to getting into empathy. You're using that whole Conte crane system to develop thick and thin lines and sharp and soft to kind of create new forms, and I'll show you how to interpret that as we go down the line here. So, good? Any questions at all so far, Dakota? I'm so glad you're on board. I'm glad you're doing well. So let's do this. Let's kind of shift gears here. Those are some of the more magnificent or the larger format empathy sketches we've been working on. Let me kind of get these organized here. And we'll pull into what we're doing recently for today. So I started here with a series of sketches doing the following here. Let's go back to these little thumbnails first. So I went through a whole series of little thumbnail sketches, just basic formats here. Looking at, it is extremely expressive, and I think that's the thing I think you'll enjoy from the point of view of putting together a product design development and anything you begin to deal with, whether it's product, as I said, all the disciplines are really great to work with. So these are little thumbnail sketches I started up during the off time here for the last couple of weeks. I just sat down and put together a series of sketches based on looking at, again, this elevation. Do we want something that's wingless? Do we want something that's maybe a reverse dihedral wing system where the actual wing structure goes rearward or forward as opposed to rearward? So I think started here, and then a real smooth gesture, tailless, very, very effective looking series here. The second elevation, a little more of an intake system, a little more bulk in the body form of the massage, etc. Then into some plan view studies where you get more of a delta or a diamond look, where I think that's where the real secret is to keep these surfaces, the ones we're looking at here today, very minimal, very diamond-like, and very stealth-like. So that was the idea behind this project that was given to work with here. So that's a little pencil sketch. Let's put that together here, over here. Another family of forms, are getting a little bit more elaborate. Now notice the mass changes here, but again, the elevation, very, very, again, diamond-like, very, very sheer and very crisp and architectural. And again, here, very triangular, then into the engine system, hanging in behind the form itself. Then this little front elevation, be a little softer, but again, the same basic overall form where the dihedrals are coming forward on the aircraft, but then the actual canards are dropping in for airflow, which would be an interpretation of this guy right here. So that's another study. Let's do this. Put that down out of the way. There's another, just a pure delta, just ballpoint pen sketches. So what happens, for example, if you go to almost a section, almost like a real stretched diamond, where you actually see that the whole form stretched out a little bit, and coming back in and using a plan view, very simple exhaust system, all that's trapped underneath, all that air intake is underneath the fuselage. So it's beginning to take a very simple, thin form, but again, very dramatic, canardless, tailless interjection system. These are probably more bomber or jet fighter or escort fighter types. So we'll kind of transition here a little bit from one to the other. And then just do this. Go back and keep going with these sketches. There's another family of forms here. There's a much more, it's a bulkier look at getting maybe more an elevation like this, but it's much more of a real strong dart, almost F-117 Nighthawk approach, but a little beefier, a little bit of a thinner, real simple canards coming off the shape itself, and a very strong exhaust system that'll chase any laser systems down and attack systems down. And again, plan view kind of interesting, and no wing form at all. It's just a pure delta. So these are the things that are coming down the line in aircraft technology that I've been doing a lot of research on and working with this company out in California, that they're looking at whole new ways of developing shape and surface and getting tailless, much more stealth-like, much crisper, much more minimal. So that was part of the ground rules we're dealing with here. So anything so far so good? Dakota, am I expressing myself okay? I'm not going too quickly here. I don't want to rush through it. I want to make sure that you get some input out of this. Did someone say aircraft? Hey, Carson, how are you? Good to see you, man. How's everything? Long time no see. Yeah, we're doing some aircraft for here, Carolina, and we're getting into empathy. And I've got some individuals on board here today that are looking into this as maybe a possible design solutions for their product work and future references. So I thought I'd take today and begin to really describe really how very simple this whole process can become. And again, the whole character behind an empathy sketch is threefold. Number one, you strike it. Number two, you analyze it. Number three, you would then interpret it. And I'll show you a little bit later on how that works on some newsprint here. So again, but these are sketches that we're looking for to develop some aircraft technology for the next generation of either an escort fighter or a medium-range or long-range bomber. So we'll see what happens here. And again, thanks Dakota for being on board. Super. And Dakota, that's good. Thank you. Let's move along here. Next sketch. Now we're getting some pretty elaborate plan views. The mask changed a little bit. This is more of a butterfly approach here. This guy here in the plan view, this would be a system where this would be the main delta up on top. Underneath, there's another bridge of wings or a butterfly system underneath that begins to stabilize the aircraft. In the front view, you've got almost like a split dihedral where you've got, pardon me, wing upper, wing lower. This is more of a simplified form here where it's one single area, where it's actually a pure delta again, very minimal surface, almost triangular in shape and section, much like this guy. Let's put them side by side. So they're almost side by side. There you are in terms of the direction looking at what this form translated into this. So it's much more of a triangular look, very minimal, extremely low profile, and difficult to detect on radar systems, which is really critical. And the material technologies play into this as well. So we'll get into that maybe a little bit later on in future streams. But today's demonstration is strictly to describe and hopefully clarify what true empathy looks like. Now, empathy is an emotion. That's true. It's a psychological emotion. But from the creative side of it, it's much more than that. In the creative side, it develops innovative, user-centric solutions in design processing and actually teamwork and all problem-solving systems. So it's a different approach altogether. It's emotional, but it's much more geared to a design process. So here we go. And then again, plan view studies here. Next, now back into elevations. Went back, for example, looked at some of the first sketches we did just to get some side views in. Very simple, very clean looking, almost just dart-like. Again, very fluid, very simple. Very dramatic, hopefully, and again, look at the change in the stance here. A little more parallel, a little more of a fracture, and again, that wing system coming out of here. And I think that wing structure, too, I would like to see, for example, what happens if you take that thing, instead of going reverse it and go forward and off of the fuselage, and take it more of a blended wing look at the whole process that we're dealing with here. So, in a little perspective study, again, very simple, a little softer, but again, intake dropped into these wing systems. And again, this is actually coming off at the in the plan view, more like this guy is here. But at the same time, maybe we take that thing and reverse it and just pull all those dihedrals or the wings forward and see what happens with the package. So there's another process here we're dealing with. Again, now we're moving into some really fun stuff here. I think this is where I started really looking, okay, maybe we keep it nice and so clean, it's actually whispers. You can't hear it, you can't see it. Very simple, straightforward. Again, plan view, looking at it here, pretty common, but the elevation kind of striking. It takes a really interesting look at this whole idea, this whole delta. No tail, no nothing, very, very much in terms of being a little more fluid, but at the same time stealth-like, but has a character about it that looks like more of an empathy sketch. It's more of a minimal attack aircraft that could be really interesting to kind of deal with. This a little bit more elaborate here, a little wider in the plan form, much more of a pure delta than some little outrigger canards that would happen out here in those areas. So again, pretty interesting system to deal with. And then all of a sudden, you know what? Maybe I'd take that approach here. Maybe we take that guy and move it into that whole process where, let's see if I can sneak in here just with a few of these guys. Maybe I take that whole process and develop what I refer to as like a wing shroud over the top, blended wing form over the top of that shroud of the fuselage, and take advantage of some of this look here and through it. But again, notice the difference in the plan views. Now, instead of being much more direct, again, dart-like, but it's got some interesting things happening inside the nacelles to make this thing really look good here in terms of being a little crisper, a little newer, and a little fresher looking. This is interesting here. Maybe that's a bit too much of a lift. Maybe this comes straight back and drops in. But the idea here is to have that whole shape wrap around the fuselage and give you much more of a really compact, fuel-efficient, energy-efficient machine. At the same time, those dihedrals coming forward like we're showing here in the plan views. A little bit more elaborate here, a little simplified here, and a lot more, and again, much more simplified here. But I think there's something about this wrap that's interesting to me in terms of looking at what's taking place. So let me stop here for a moment. I don't want to go too quickly here. Again, am I doing okay, guys, as far as description goes and what the process is, where it's leading us? I don't want to move too quickly here and not get ourselves put together here in terms of confusing. How you coming, Karsten? Are you still with me? It's great to have back on board. Man, long time no speak. And Dakota, much appreciate you taking the time to join us here. So I'll wait for a moment any commentary before we move on to the next series of family of sketches here. Again, so much fun. I think empathy, while we're waiting for some responses here, empathy has always been one of those tremendous tools, for example, that I've used over the years. It's absolutely amazing. Whenever you get to the place, for example, where you feel like, well, maybe the ideas are running out and there's just not enough newness, I always revert right back to empathy, utilize it, and begin to translate it, and it just opens up all types of doors of creativity. So it's really been cool. So there she is. Different approach here again. This moving more to maybe a long-range bomber, but we'll see what happens with this thing here, or a medium range. Could also be an interdiction aircraft as well. So we're going to keep that definition open for the time being. So there's that sketch here. Let me roll this thing over, and then again, went back to normal. This guy, it just didn't seem in the same ballpark as something like this would be. I mean, just again, look at them side by side. This is one approach, and then the other approach is much newer, I think. Let's get this up together here. This is a much newer approach down below here. This is almost where we are here today. I'm going to be out there another about 10 to 15 years in terms of developing a technology or a character in aircraft design that could really be a different Hummer altogether here. So let's do that, and we'll put these aside. Now, from that batch of sketches, that little exploratory work, passage of studies here, I went ahead here and did the following. Now, let's bring this one sketch back out here just for a moment. When I finished this guy up right here, I thought, okay, now it's time to maybe, not that one. That's a little bit too dated. Maybe it's time to take this approach right here and begin to develop it and really begin to open up what that could possibly look like. Now, take it another step, for example. Now here, this is more Karsten Caroline, I'm working on aircraft as I'm listening to someone on aircraft. Hey, how about that? Working on aircraft, very cool. That's outstanding, Carson, so thank you so much. And Dakota, so far so good. Everything in good shape here as far as communication goes. I do not want to be too rapid here. There's a lot of sensitivity here, especially for you, Dakota, that the first time you're going to see this come together, and I'm not being insulting here, I just want to be very careful that I communicate clearly what the mission is. And as I said earlier, I'm more than happy in the future references to get into empathy as a product design tool system that might be of assistance to you as well. But you'll see how it all operates in just a few moments here. So, there we go. So, here we go. Now, on that guy right there, I thought, it'd be interesting to take this thing more into an empathy study here. More of an interesting study in empathy. So let's take a look at this game, and I'll keep this aside just for a moment. And now we're moving into these. This is now empathy in this aircraft study. There you go. That's what it starts to look like. It's really an interesting approach here. Let me just kind of sneak these up here a little bit. Now, notice that whole idea of, this is on newsprint, and I'll be showing a little bit, I'll be working with Content Crane, which looks like that. and you're just laying down strikes. And you're not trying to think in terms of a lot of surface definition. You're just looking at emotion. What does it look like when you start to put this together? And notice, back to this sketch here, these following studies went together on this basic premise. With a long, low, thin, very stealth-like elevation and a very, very abrupt forward dihedral, forward wing structure, which is this starting to imply here. So let's leave that up for a moment. Now, this is step one. This is the first study I did based on that theme. There's step number 2. Now, no, much simpler. Look at that. I mean, just a very simple straight line in terms of putting together form. And then again, notice, let's go back to that 3-step process. Number 1, this is the strike. That's a strike, meaning that you're going to lay it down. Secondly, you go back in. Once that's done, you start to look at it from a point of view of analysis. Where do I want the landing gear? Where do I want the engines? Do I want tail piston? Do I want more wing? Do I want flaps and dihedrals in some certain areas? That's when you start to analyze what you've got. So you're beginning. You can stretch it, you can reduce it, you can lift it, etc. It becomes very malleable. So that's what the whole idea of a strike means. And when you analyze it, that's when you start to put together your vision based on what you're starting to see what it's doing. So that's that's the third study. Let's see. Oops, did I miss one? Yeah, I did. They stuck together here. Yeah, here's 2. Look at this. 2 is really interesting. Now it's getting pretty dramatic. I thought these were starting to look at some very interesting shapes and form, especially this guy right here. Notice again that this extends out. That gets much thinner, drops into that wing surface and that blended wing system, and begins to generate over the top of those sketches what might happen when you put together the rest of the whole form, begin to analyze when you put the pieces together, landing gear, canopy, detailing, engine work, nacelles, exhaust, all those things come together after the strike is done. And you can't force it and you can't predict it. It's got to be very emotional. How do you feel about what you see? That's a good way to look at it too. How do you feel about what you see? What's in your mind? How do you see it? And then give it an emotion. And then again, give it an innovative, user-centric solution. There it is. And put it in formula here. So that's the second one. Pardon me, I jumped the page here. Make sure here's number 3. Looking at those guys. Again, a little bit more, a little fatter and chunkier. I wasn't too pleased with some of these surfaces in here. Some of these shapes are nice and interesting, but it didn't have the same romance, for example, that this last one did. I think this one really started to tell a story. That guy right there, and actually both of these, minus that dihedral up on top, they started to tell a story. It was interesting how you keep it all low profile. That just shoots right through. Then you've got this blended wing that wraps over the top of that. So that's that. Back to this third one we just looked at here. And go back into now, let's go back into number 4. That's the 4th study. Again, now notice, it gets a little bit more, it gets a little choppier. I was looking at, in a case like this, what would happen if the whole body form was low profile, opened up and had this blended wing surface with the actual wing coming forward, then a canopy was cantilevered out of that. Possibility. Exhaust system behind that, and a little bit of a canard or a tail, a rudder back here to stabilize it. That's another approach to look at it here too. So that was the 4th series of empathies we did. And then I switched gears. What about plan view? What happens in the plan view now when I look at these guys? What do I do? Now, do I take this thing and get a lot more dart-like, a little softer and sharp, and then begin to open it up, then with that wing coming forward? What does this do in here? Is that a section change or a platform to get to this wing surface out here? Those are the things that I'm not really, it's interesting, I hope I'm explaining this properly. I'm not really thinking about canopy, surfaces, engine, exhaust, dihedrals, wings. I'm just looking at form. Then I'll put all that analysis back together again. So this is the first one I did as far as plan views go. It gets a little bit complicated in here, but again, notice it starts to get like that, almost that stealth pattern that saw took back in through here. Same with this guy. This would be symmetrical. Flip that beauty over, and you've got that form coming together. So that's another approach here. And then let's go to number 2. Some more plan views. You know, he's a little busy in this. I was really happy with that guy. That gets too, and that's another thing I want to notice and really specify too in this empathy things. You can do an empathic sketch. And I think the most effective empathic sketch is simplify it. You get too many things going on, it just kind of destroys a character. Now, I would have been better off had it just eliminated that whole upper, let's see here, I would eliminate that whole upper piece right there. Now it starts to take on some character, but that added wing dihedral or wing structure kind of just took it the very common and clumsy, made it very clumsy. This is a little bit cleaner, a little rounder, and again that sheer dart coming through here again. And then off of that, maybe a rounder wing form, and off of that, if I were to go this and analyze this wing surface would be much crisper, so it gets much more just really, really wicked looking. So that's it for that guy. That's the second pass we did. And let me move along here. Third pass. Again, notice again, pretty busy. Just the proportions did not look good here at all. This started to look interesting. Now, what do you do with this? And maybe we lighten that up a little bit. Maybe open that up a little bit more and pivot it. So it kind of, those are the things we're going to look at in terms of putting the sketches together. Again, notice there's not a whole lot there in terms of definition. There's a lot more in terms of emotion. And I think that's the thing we're looking for. There's really the emotional side of this thing here. So there's another one. Let's go to this guy here. There she is. Oh, this is interpretation. Let's go back to this for a moment. This one is an overhead interpretation of what these guys are doing right here. Let's go back to that sketch number 2. In sketch number 2, this was more of a look that we're looking for here. This is the sketch we did based on this study right here. I took that form right there and began to develop an overhead 3/4. What does it look like if I start to put that together? There's what it might look like right there. Notice how that wing glove, that blended wing comes up over the top. Oop, let me put those down here. That blended wing comes up over the top, wraps around the shape itself, and begins to give you that form for the wing surface to come rearward here. So I might take this and move it rearward a little bit if we carry the shape on a little further. And this comes right straight through the fuselage into the exhaust system here. But again, this very combination of being very organic and then very sheer at the same time up in front could be very interesting to look at here. So that's where the interpretation came from. This is more of a case of looking at this guy right here. Let's go back to that just for a moment. That shape right there in this plan view, notice how that comes through. This one almost directly related to what we did here. So I'm just trying to go back and forth here to kind of put some melody together and a system together to get this thing to work. So there we are right there. That was an interpretation of some of those sketches. Let me stop there for a moment and pick up on you guys. Are we doing okay? As far as communication goes, I don't want to rush through this. I want to make sure that you begin to see what the pattern is beginning to develop. Everything good? Please help me out here, gang. Just really good to have your voice in it and making sure that I'm communicating clearly here. I'll just stop for a moment and give you a little bit of a break. Think about what we're after here. And again, the whole process here today is to develop that 3-step stage in developing an empathic study. And that is, again, strike it, and then analyze it, and then begin to interpret it. And I'll show you how that works in just a few moments here. But I want to make sure we're communicating clearly here. Excellent. Fab, very good. Thanks, Dakota. Just really interesting how it all comes together here and how fluid it becomes. And again, notice what I really want to get across here. If nothing else is heard today, I hope this is heard very clearly, that the empathic studies that we are looking at begin to teach us a whole new vocabulary. I'll answer that question in just a moment here. And when you look at empathy, what I've discovered over the years, it opens a whole new vocabulary of shape and development. And I'll say this too, and I hope it doesn't come out for the time not being self-serving, but I've never had an issue where I've been log jammed or had a difficult time developing ideas. When I get to the place where I get a little bit, when the walls move in a little bit, I use empathy. It opens it up again. It's an incredible tool for creativity. And while I'm at it here, let me answer your question, Dakota. I will render this guy. Once we've what I will do is take this particular shape and modify it a little bit more, a little bit further, and begin to use that as a rendering device, and maybe go into some marker pastel studies or a sketch rendering system. So that's yet to come. But I think to me, this is the seed of the idea that I want to develop. This whole idea of having a very simple form, very romantic shape, very stealth-like, and at the same time, the wings, I don't know if I'm really happy with that wing location. I might come back off of this area here and come back and push it a little bit further rearward so it has a more contrast to it. So does that help you answer your question? That's yet to come. I'm going to develop this a little bit further. It's there. It's part of the theme we're looking for, but I think it's not quite there yet. There's some neat shapes going on in that form. The body form I think is interesting. Maybe you get a little sharper with it, a little more stealthy, more dart-like, and begin to move off of that. So we'll see what happens here. Good? That help you answer your question? Fantastic. I mean, this is great to have. That's a great interface here, guys. Excellent. Very good. So let's move here. And now the next one is this. No, that was already there. And these are already in. I think we already looked at these guys. Now, there's one more package I'm going to look at here. From this sketch right here. Let me put this up on top here. From that study, I went right back in and said, okay, let's do some elevations here. There's a series of elevations based on this form. To answer your question, Dakota, on that form, we're going to take this and begin to look at these sketches here, right here. Now we're back into some elevations. Notice, now we're starting to put some analysis together. Where do I want the cockpit? What's the landing gear look like? What about the exhaust system back here? What about that wrap over system with that wing coming forward? A little bit too slippery here, a bit too long and too elongated. But the brisker, yeah, this starts to take on some character, where it has much more of almost like an XB70 nose cone on it. Then it comes back down and into that wrap, that blended wing, and into that forward wing surface that we're looking at to hopefully develop here. So that's where we are with those guys. That was one pass, and I went back and did another one. What about this? That could be interesting. I mean, look at. I want to say this very carefully. Look how fluid that shape is in terms of just being so simple in the elevation, and it's so simple in the elevation, and yet it just stretches that thing and it gives it some sense of believability. And again, it comes back to this sketch right here. All these studies come off of that study right there, looking at how that might look like in an elevation, and then how to begin to look at that by putting some pieces together that kind of tell the story in that process itself. So we're getting closer here. This to me would be a family of shapes or forms, and I begin to develop further. To answer your question, Dakota, I'm going to take those two sketches right there and develop this a little bit further. Maybe an overhead, a couple of 3/4 fronts, but for next week, I'm going to start developing this a little bit further and take it into a system where we might find, for example, a good solution overall. So let me stop there for a moment. I'm going to ask you a question. Is there anything here? Do you feel, Carson and also Dakota, do you feel like these sketches merit that approach you're looking for? Do they have the character we're after? That kind of gives us this personality, but much more refined. I'm going to hold on here for a moment. It might be a little quiet, but I'm going to wait to make sure we get some good feedback here. Are there any favorites? I think, again, while we are waiting, the favorite to me was this, as far as an empathy goes. Not the favorite, but the most telling shape was this guy right here. Something about that form. It had that very strong character to it. Ring forward, cantilever canopy, tail system, etc. Give me that. So let me just hold on here, folks. I'm going to make sure we get some good things, some good impact here. Is there anything, do you think that these sketches, this family here, merits a further definition and getting a little more and strike into it? If it does, if you feel that way, very swan-like. Yeah, it is. It's very swan-like. I mean, that's an excellent description. But I think I would take this basic formula here, and then from here, bring that wing forward, bring this wing forward, and see what happens with it in those perspective sketches we're going to look at for next week. So, yeah, very good, excellent. How about you, Carson? You still with us? That you're working on aircraft work today? Great. It's so good to have you on board again. Pardon me. Yeah, there's just something about this. While we're waiting here for a response from if Carson's still with us here, for Dakota, if this helps at all too. When I was at design staff, for example, we would take empathy sketches like this. For example, in an advanced Corvette, we would take sketches like this, an empathy study, and do it in quarter scale, or actually fifth scale, pardon me. Then blow that up to full size and put that up on the drawing board, for example, over a package drawing, and use the empathy study to develop Corvettes. And that's how the C8 program started at design staff. Pardon me, using empathy to develop that shape. So there's a whole lot of latitude in developing this whole newness. So, hey, look at an antenna. Good for you. So there we are. Let's go back and now that that's set, let's do this. I brought a pad along here. I want to show you, for example, blank paper. This is your paper. Now I want to show how empathy begins. This is a contact crayon. I'll be using contact crayon on newsprint. I'm going to show you, for example, how to strike these things. And again, Dakota, if this helps at all, again, it's a brilliant method. There's no doubt about it, Dakota. It's so fresh, so unique. And I will promise you, if you begin to use it in your craft, especially you as well, Carson, when you use that in your craft, you will have a vocabulary of newness and shape studies that you would not believe. And I'll say this too, because I know you won't think this. I'm not being self-serving. I have never had a problem developing new ideas because empathy has always been my great friend. It's a huge tool. It just strikes things open. You see things differently. Your idea, you're looking inside and out of the shapes. Let me explain that for a moment. You're looking inside and outside of the shapes. Inside the shape. Am I using that thick line or that thin line or that thick line? Am I utilizing that sharp against that little cantilever right there? Is that part of the canopy process? I mean, that's the kind of thinking. That's what it does for you. It just takes you away from the typical, oh, here we go again, I've done this before approach. It's a whole new way of looking at things. And I will say this too, I've said this over the years, and I will never, ever fail to mention it. This was the brilliance of Sid Mead. Sid Mead utilized this process in his work, all the film graphics he did, all the film technology he did, and his Obligón and his studios and the United States steel work, all done with empathic sketches. He was a genius at it. And he showed us this, and I'll never forget it. It just opened up all wow, look what this does. It's absolutely electrifying. So, all that to say, you get a Conte crane, and I'm using Conte crane of Paris, and it's an HB, which is a hard lead, which gives you this kind of look. Ready? Lay it down, pick up the edge. You're going to pick up the edge so you got a nice sharp edge on this, and you're going to go thick and thin and over, through, down, and again. Look at that. I mean, there's so much in that. Is this an engine intake? Is that part of it? Now, if I can go back in here and just add, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll leave that where it is. Look at that. I mean, that's just a series of thick and thin lines. And again, look at the ghost light going through that. Does that shape come through and form into that? Does that open up a little bit? Does that go wider and pick up that dihedral? It could do that, absolutely. Again, let's do this again. Long stroke, just a nice simple shape. There it is. Into this, into that, into that. I mean, look at that forms there. This might be going the other way. Who knows? You could take this thing and say, okay, maybe that's part of the process, but maybe I want to come back and pick up that same line and just come back through here and just sharpen this thing up. I mean, look at that's the process behind each line. What's the thought process behind each line? The thought process behind each line is just trying to develop shape or character. Do I want it to be organic? Do I want it to be stealth-like? Do I want to be sheer? Do I want to be very romantic? Do I want to be rugged? Do I want to be very fluid? The line surface, again, I'll use that. Let's do this. We got a fresh sheet of paper. I'll use that, the whole system here, Dakota. The thought process is just looking at the magic of thick against thin. Let's go back in one more time here. This, into that, into this, that, and possibly that. There it is. There's no real, the thought process is, what am I looking at in terms of thicks and thins? How do I want this shape to work with? What happens, for example, if I do this? What happens when I come back in and give myself, let me get a red pen here. What if I take that shape and say, okay, there I am, let me give myself a center line. If that's my center line, does that shape now doing this? Again, there's my plan view. If I were to take that and begin to reverse that and go the other way and begin to take this shape and open this up and develop this and come back out of that and project these points through, project this point through, and again that point, and again this point to that point, and open that up, and I'm here, here's my center line, to about right there, open that shape up, bring this in and marry it, pick up that shape right there, open that little shoulder up, and begin to connect that dot. And again, right back into this. Again, now that shape through, and again, that shape through. There it is. That's how you begin. That's your center line. That's your measuring stick, for example. It's not quite off here, I'm sorry. Let's come back out, open that up a bit more. Again, when you begin to put that in a form, there it is. Maybe you kind of tighten that up a bit. Open this up. Maybe you come back and step in through here. Step in through there and get the exhaust kind of read in there in the canopy. And then again, in the markings. There you are. That's what helps you kind of see what the shapes are doing. Does that help? Making sense? Let's go back and just do this. Let's break this guy in half. Then we'll kind of break it down just a bit here and do another little empathy study here. I'll hold on for a minute. Dakota, did that help to answer your question? The thought process behind each line is much more of an emotional feel about, I've got a vision. I'm not being predictable about it. I'm not trying to force it, but what happens when I use thick and thin lines to interpret that vision, then begin to analyze it, and then begin to interpret it, which we did here. Help? Let me stop there just for a moment. Helping? Very cool. This is fun stuff, guys. What do you think? Yeah, good deal. Thanks very much. Excellent. Thanks, Dakota. One more time. Into shape. How simple that is, how fluid that becomes. Now, again, let me use this sketch here as an example. There's an example here. Now, do I come out here, and does that canopy start here or out here? Is that all canopy? Does that become part of the wing surface? Is that a dihedral or tail surface? I don't want to do that. Maybe it's more of this, where I come back in and just shoot up on top, come back and reverse it, bring it back in, wrap it over, and then end it right there and terminate that. All of a sudden, look at the shapes you're dealing with there. This could be a lot of weight in here, but there's another second right in through here. There's a surface right in through here that kind of blend in. You could begin to drop that into place. And let's do this, just for what it's worth. Let's come back in and say we're going to use that. It's this, into this, back to that, into the wrap over, into that area right here, into that tail surface. Maybe we extend this a little bit further and give us a little more hair. That comes in. Maybe this is all part of that whole process here. Maybe there's another canard down below here. Maybe we pick this up and we drop that in. Now let's give it some definition. Some shadow over the top of that. Now let's drop this into place. And this would be negative space into positive space. And for what it's worth, and there you are. What do you think, gang? Helping? I don't want to go too quickly here, but does this help to see with the interpretation? And that's the form. Strike it again, and then the interpretation comes out of there. Whole new set of vocabulary here. Let's kind of tune this in just a little further. A little more rendering into this guy. This might be engine nacelle. intake, and exhaust. Look at the difference in seeing that vocabulary work together here. So let me stop there for a moment. Does help, guys? I don't want to go too fast, but hopefully this kind of gives you some idea of where we are with this whole shape. Very cool. It's just such a tremendous, tremendous tool. Cannot say enough about it. It's been an absolute enormous friend over the years and will continue to be as time moves on here. I use it all the time. And hopefully in future streams, I might go ahead and go into product design, architecture, etc. In fact, we could do that with some of these guys right here. If I look at that shape and elevation, what happens if I rotate it and do this? What happens if I say it upside down? Wow, that's interesting. See how it moves around a little bit? It kind of gives you a whole new vocabulary on shape and design. You actually take this guy right here and say, that's interesting. Oh boy. What if that's it? That's really unique. All right, let me stop here for a moment. Again, Dakota, good? So far, so good? Again, the question you had earlier was a very good one. The thought process is very much emotional, very problem-solving oriented. Yeah, the vision is there, but it's not predictable. I'm letting the lines in the content crane do the work for me here. Anybody at all here, gang? Carson, how about you? You still with us? All right, let's go back here to do one more little study, and we're going to wrap this thing up. One more empathy here. Hopefully, Dakota, you're getting to see how this begins to function. So once again here, one more time. Let's go back now. This aircraft. Let's say it's this into this into that into that. Look at that. There's a ton of ideas in here. Tremendous ideas. That's full. Very good. Again, notice if I were to take this guy, let's look at this guy just for a moment. I want to come back in and interpret that again. Let's do this. If I come back in and begin to get that return sweep, let that come out here, and get this to come out a little further. Now I'm analyzing it just a bit. I've got the strike. Now I'm analyzing it. Now if I take this and begin to return this into it, take that shape. That's strong. That shape becomes a little elevation. This comes out of here. That little form we're going to utilize. And this we're going to bring in here and just dive that right into that form right there and then dive that in. So I'm making some adjustments as I go. So this might be an intake here. This might be a process where I take this shape, come uphill, finish that off, and begin to pick up that shape right there and open that up and begin to add exhaust. There I am. Helping? Now, next step. Let's come back in, put a little bit of tone to it. And again, now let's do this. Let's break this out in a section. Here's my 50-inch line right through here. Now let's break this out. Going the other way. There you go. Look what that does. There are those sections and how they change. Helping? Again, let me drop this down just a little bit. There we are. That's the basic strike. Then we went back in to find it a little bit, and then we put some definition to it, or the other thing, interpretation. What are those forms doing? I can come back in here again and add more section. And finish that form out nicely. Come the other way. I mean, look at that. Right away, you've got this phenomenal, interesting approach to section development. And again, you can come back through the strike here, and you can come back through and do a horizontal study, where this comes along, steps up and rolls over. There's your form there. And then back into this. I mean, just infinite. Hey, Antares, no problem. Good to have you on board. I will try to I'm about running out of time here, Terra, so hopefully you get a chance to look at it earlier. Not a problem that you're late. I hope you're okay. Thank you for joining us anyway. Let me go back to Dakota for a moment. Dakota, just helping? Again, strike initially, and then into the analyze what the shapes are doing, put a little bit of tone to it, and then begin to interpret some of the sections. That's the secret to success. Anybody. No problem, Terrace. How you doing? Fantastic to have you all on board. So nice to have you on board here. So let me do this for a second. And here again, let me just stop there. There again. What do you think? That's much appreciated, Dakota. That's really cool. So you can take advantage of this guy. You can say, okay, what if we did this? So, again, just try to develop certain shapes here. The secret to empathetic sketch usage. Yep, I wouldn't know, really, let me clarify that. It's really not a charcoal stick as much as it is a Conte crayon. For example, let me put this up on the screen. There it is right there. That's what you want to work with. Conte de Paris, black and HB. That's the hardest lead you've got there. So it's not a Conte or a charcoal. Charcoal is pretty brittle. It'll break down on you quite a bit here. So let's get rid of these guys. Now, let me wrap this thing up here, guys. You've been really patient here today. Well, let's close with this. Let me sharpen this guy up. Let me sharpen that guy up. And anybody, any closing commentary at all about where we are with this thing? I'm just going to go back to this little study right here and just show you where we are here. And actually more of this. This is where we actually ended up. We took this shape right here. This bottom study right here, if I can find that perspective sketch real quick, and got a little form study out of that by doing this, like a little aircraft overhead concept study here. So let me stop here for a second here, guys. And wrapping this up, any questions at all? I hope I've thoroughly explained what this process does and what it looks like. I really appreciate it. And Terrace, I'm doing well in the stream an hour earlier today. No, it was right on the same time, about 2 o'clock. So I'm very sorry here, Terrace, but I'm glad you're on board. Maybe you get a chance to watch it later. I've got a bunch of sketches ahead of time, then went into a little study, into definition, then showed some sketches, and then empathy, and then hopefully you wrapped it up here. So, no, not at all. We started right about 2:15, I think. So, any questions at all, gang? How do you feel about this? Hopefully, I'm saying this to help myself. Hopefully, not to insult you. Did I do a decent job of describing what this process does and what it looks like? Help me out here. I don't want to confuse anybody. Please, God forbid. Huh, interesting. That's really strange, yeah. No kidding, 7 p.m. now, wow. Yeah, because I'm very conscious of that time. You're in Liverpool, so I'm making sure that you're 5 ahead, so I started around 2. It should be good. You did. Excellent. Anyway, very good. Well, listen, let's do this. Here's my plan here, folks. I hope you'll agree with this. So I missed it. I'll be sure to. Hey, not at all. Not at all, Terrace. I'm glad you got a chance to come on board here. And for future reference, I always try to shoot every Wednesday between 2 and 2:15 our time, which would put it maybe 7:15 your time. So I'll make sure to be conscious of that. And here's what I'd like to propose for next Wednesday. I'm going to come back in and take this theme right here. This theme in terms of overall sketch and what was that, empathy? Yeah, this overall sketch and that theme and empathy. Begin to develop more of a good, solid, maybe analyze it from an aircraft point of view, and begin to do some sketches around what this thing might look like. And this, as we said earlier, I'm not really happy with the overall. Maybe these kind of move rearward and the dihedral will come off of them. Maybe it's not as severe, but something in that shape we'll work on and do some rendering work with that next week. So as we have phase 2, I'm going to call it Empathy, part 2, and we'll go back in and develop these aircraft systems more in tune and more in line. And I want to make certain I make this very clear. Dakota, for you, please let me know what might be a good time here, maybe about 2 or 3 sessions out. I'm going to do one strictly for empathy and product design. Maybe we pick a tool of some sort, a hand tool, and we're going to utilize that as a design element to create new shapes and new forms. If that'll help you, I'm more than happy to do that. Same with you, Antares. I'll use it, for example, in architecture. We'll show you how to use it in architecture and how it all begins to develop a whole new vocabulary of shapes and forms. It's stunning. To me, it's always been absolutely incredible to me what you come up with in terms of using empathy, as opposed to doing a typical sketch. It opens up floodgates of creativity. So hopefully that helps everybody. And Carson, Dakota, and Van Terrace, thank you so much for joining me today. And I do apologize for the last 2 weeks. It's been an absolute nightmare with that water break. No problem, not a severe damage in the home, but we got it all organized and we got it completed. So I really think in terms of, I'm grateful for the fact that you joined me today and so grateful for your patience. And above all else, grateful for you. So I hope it's all going to do good things here. We'll look at this phase 2 next week, next Wednesday, and have some fun with this thing and take it a little bit further and take it from there. Not a problem. Thank you, Dakota. It's good to have you on board, and I wish you very much, very, very well. And if you have some sketches to send along, Dakota, great, and Terrace, you as well. And Carson, keep working on his aircraft stuff, and please, don't be a stranger. We're glad to have you back on board today. All the very best. And I have always make it, take a moment to visit my website, drcontrast.com. Second, if you want to drop me a note, my email address, Jim at drcontrast.com. Happy to respond. I might not get right away, but I will definitely respond. And last but not least, I always finish with this, because it's the most important part of the whole day. Number 1. Never forget to dare to remember to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 2 o'clock in Terrace. And hopefully, again, hope you get a chance to look at it tonight. And if you do look at it, just drop me an email and let me know what you think. Great to have your input, as it always is. You as well, Dakota, and you as well, Carson. Great stuff, gang. Great week. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye now.